In the news tonight, the Palestinian president proposes Israel carry out a gradual 3-year withdrawal from the occupied West Bank as part of any future peace deal. Syria's peace talks in Switzerland stumble over the country's political future, and the UN mediator says discussions would continue until Friday. And as ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi stands trial in a Cairo court, gunmen shoot dead a senior interior ministry official and a policeman in separate attacks in the latest blow to a military-backed Egyptian government. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas proposed that Israel carry out a gradual 3-year withdrawal from the occupied West Bank as part of any future peace deal. Abbas gave that time frame in an interview in Ramallah, shown at an international security conference in Tel Aviv.
I'm saying that clearly. Whoever proposes 10 or 15 years for a transition period does not want to withdraw. We say that a transitional period not exceed 3 years, during which Israel can withdraw gradually. We are willing to allow a third party to take Israel's place during and after the withdrawal in order to soothe our concerns and those of Israel, and to assure both sides that things will continue as normal. I think that NATO is the suitable party for this mission.
والطرف المناسب لمثل هذه المهمة.
The offer fell short of Israeli demands as Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon challenged the effectiveness of the Palestinian president's current security commitments. Ya'alon poured scorn on the commitment of the Palestinian Authority to follow through in moves against Palestinian activists. But Abbas said all the security forces are devoted to performing their duty to prevent arms smuggling and their use within the Palestinian Authority or Israel. And over to the Syria peace talks in Geneva. A new round of face-to-face negotiations between the Syrian government and the opposition stumbled over the country's political transition of power. While the opposition demanded that any political deal should rule out any role by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian government said a transition of power in the country should not be imposed on Syrians from abroad. But despite the rift between the government and the opposition, UN and Arab-mediated Syria He said the peace talks would continue until Friday. Here's more on today's discussions.
A new round of direct talks between Syria's opposition and the Syrian government faltered once a discussion of the country's political future was tackled. The Syrian opposition delegate demanded that a political transition in Syria should be based on the Geneva I communique, which obviously rules out the Syrian president from any future political settlement.
Our opposition delegation stated that we are here to discuss the implementation of the Geneva communique, at which point the regime side, I think, felt very much under pressure and started again using very confrontational language.
As a result, UN Arab mediator Lakhdar Brahimi asked to break up the session to be completed later in the afternoon. But the afternoon session was cancelled over a rift with the government on the goals of the talks. The government delegation presented a document for negotiation which did not mention a transitional power, but rather a declaration of basic principles to choose a political system without imposed formulas from abroad.
We were again disappointed that a draft statement on behalf of the Syrian delegation was prepared and read out during the morning session. Suddenly, the other party said they don't agree with such a statement and that they support the United States steps to arm terrorist groups and to provide them with all kinds of weapons.
The deadlock over Syria's political future, however, doesn't seem to be a complete failure of the ongoing talks, as a concession was made by the opposition. The Syrian opposition said it's willing to lift a siege on 3 pro-government villages in the north of the country as part of a wider agreement to relieve besieged towns on both sides. Rad Abdouche for the news at 10.
And while Syria's warring sides were debating their country's political future, the United Nations aid convoy said it is still waiting the green light to deliver food to the besieged city of Homs. The United Nations announced it is ready to deliver a month of rations for 2,500 people in the old city. Families trapped in Homs are a small fraction of the 250,000 Syrians who are living under siege in Syria. The government has encircled hundreds of thousands of people across the country, blocking off food and medicine. Meanwhile, and on the ground in Syria, fighting continued between government forces and rebels. Videos posted on social media websites appear to show Syrian rebels shelling government positions in Aleppo. One video purported to show rebel fighters opening fire at government forces from a building in Ma'arat al-Irtiq. Another video showed a makeshift cannon which rebels claim belonged to government forces shelling a site in the town of Beit Bari. And in a third video, a group of rebels are shown gathering around a dead body they said belonged to a Hezbollah leader. Ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi went on trial today at a Cairo police academy on charges of breaking out of prison during the 2011 uprising against Hosni Mubarak. Morsi, who is charged with the kidnapping and murder of policemen and helping prisoners escape from the Wadi al-Natrun jail north of Cairo, where he was also being held, has also been charged in 3 other cases. Unlike his first court appearance in November, in which he wore a suit, Morsi today was wearing the white prison uniform. He was in a soundproof glass-encased metal cage, pacing and shouting angrily at the judge, declaring to them that he remains Egypt's legitimate leader. Morsi was flown in by helicopter from Burj Al Arab prison in Alexandria, while some 130 others who are on trial with him were driven to Cairo. And hours before Morsi appeared in court at a Cairo, a police gunman on a motorbike killed a senior Egyptian Interior Ministry official in Cairo. The death of General Mohammed Said, head of the technical office of the Minister of Interior, suggested militants were stepping up their campaign against the state at a delicate time in Egyptian politics. A bullet shattered the windows of the car Said was in shortly after leaving his home. In broad daylight, Said was laid to rest this afternoon. Not only that, and after the assassination of Said, a police officer was killed and another injured when gunmen opened fire at a police unit outside a Cairo church. The policeman was guarding the Virgin Mary Coptic Church in the 6th of October city west of Cairo. Egyptian police said they apprehended the perpetrators, a driver and a passenger, and found an automatic rifle and a shotgun in the car. Iraqi government forces battling al-Qaeda-linked militants intensified airstrikes and artillery fire on the city of Ramadi. At least 20 militants in the eastern part of the city were killed in the military operation. The conflict in Anbar has focused Washington's attention in Iraq as fears grow about a spillover from the war in neighboring Syria. The U.S. administration yesterday notified Congress of plans to sell 24 Apache attack helicopters to Iraq, part of an effort to bolster the military against al-Qaeda-linked militants. UN nuclear inspectors arrived in Iran to visit a uranium mine as part of a cooperation pact meant to help allay international concerns about the country's nuclear program. Tomorrow, a planned inspection of the Gishin mine in southern Iran will be the first by the International Atomic Energy Agency at this site since 2005. Allowing the UN nuclear agency to go to the plant was among 6 concrete steps Iran agreed to under the November 11th agreement with the IAEA. The IAEA-Iran deal is separate from a November 24th breakthrough accord between Iran and 6 world powers to curb Iran's nuclear program in return for limited easing of sanctions that have battered its economy. But both accords signaled a rapid improvement in Iran's troubled ties with the outside world. Ukrainian Prime Minister Mykola Azarov resigned today, while deputies loyal to President Viktor Yanukovych backtracked and overturned anti-protest laws they rammed through parliament 12 days ago. The first real concessions by Yanukovych since the crisis erupted 2 months ago brought cries of hurrah from several thousand demonstrators in Kiev. However, opposition leaders said they would continue to harness street power to wring even more gains from the president. Here's a story.
Ukraine loses its prime minister and a controversial anti-protest law. In an attempt to help find a peaceful solution to ongoing unrest, Prime Minister Mykola Azarov offered to resign on Tuesday. Under the Constitution, the departure of the prime minister means the resignation of the entire government, a wish from some protesters.
I think that the will of the people will be to replace all those in power. Then people would definitely leave the streets, destroy all these barricades and bring Kiev back to order. People want all those in power all over the country to be replaced.
Azarov announced his decision as Parliament voted to repeal an anti-protest law enacted last week. That law spurred violent demonstrations throughout Kiev and the rest of the country. From behind massive barricades that have been a mainstay in recent weeks, protesters are not impressed.
My personal opinion is that the government is incapable of being honest, and they have proven it on multiple occasions. There has never been a government that would so blatantly lie to its people and not value its people.
What originally started as a protest against President Viktor Yanukovych's U-turn on an economic deal, demonstrations have turned against misrule and corruption in the government.
U.S. President Barack Obama will deliver the annual State of the Union address in a few hours, a speech that will lay out his vision for what the White House is calling a year of action. A divided Congress has meant a lot of inaction on key proposals made in last year's State of the Union address, and as a result, Obama is now indicating that he is willing to bypass Congress to get things done this year. Reducing inequalities between the rich and the poor and helping boost the middle class are expected to be key themes of Obama's address. The White House produced and posted a hip and media-savvy video clip online showing Obama and his speechwriters preparing for the address. Still in the United States, a rare blast of snow hit the U.S. South, prompting schools to close, airlines to cancel thousands of flights, and emergency officials to warn of icy roads. The southern cold snap is part of an Arctic front that put much of the northeast and northern plains under warnings and advisories for dangerous wind chills. Parts of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina saw significant icing, while light to heavy snow was expected in some parts of the southern mid-Atlantic states. Temperatures in parts of those regions could feel as cold as -35 Celsius. While in northern Wisconsin, winter has transformed the rocky coastline along the Lake Superior shores into a wonderland of spectacular icy caves. Pete Seeger, who helped create the modern American folk music movement, co-wrote enduring songs like If I Had a Hammer, and in turn became a leading voice for social justice, died at the age of 94. Upon news of his death, he was hailed in social and traditional media as a hero, America's conscience, and a man of the people. Seeger was well known for his liberal politics, working as an environmentalist and protesting against wars from Vietnam to Iraq. In the early 40s, Seeger and Woody Guthrie started the Almanac Singers, and then he went on to found another key folk group, the Weavers. Super Bowl festivities officially kicked off in New York with a rock concert and fireworks display. The New York, New Jersey Super Bowl host committees held the outdoor Super Bowl kickoff spectacular concert. Rockers The Fray, Daughtry and the Goo Goo Dolls braved the frigid temperatures to perform for the football fans along the Hudson River. The event was capped off with a fireworks display. The Denver Broncos will play the Seattle Seahawks this coming Sunday. Lewis Hamilton walked away from a heavy crash after putting in the first laps of Formula One's new turbo era in testing with Mercedes. Twin black streaks of scorched tire rubber at the end of the Jerez pit straight marked the asphalt when Hamilton had locked up and careered into the tire wall. Mercedes blamed a car failure on the Britain's 18th lap of the day for the crash and were investigating. Formula One has ditched the ear-splitting 2.4-litre V8 engines for a new turbocharged 1.6-litre V6 with complex energy recovery systems and more emphasis on fuel economy. And finally, cold and partly cloudy weather tonight with southwesterly light to moderate winds. Frost formation is also expected in the hilly areas and the Badia. As for tomorrow, a slight rise in temperature is expected, but it will remain relatively cold and partly cloudy with southeasterly moderate winds changing to northwesterly in the evening. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect cold conditions tonight, but fair tomorrow with northerly moderate winds picking up at times and the seas calm. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. The Palestinian president proposes Israel carry out a gradual 3-year withdrawal from the occupied West Bank as part of any future peace deal. Syria's peace talks in Switzerland stumble over the country's political future, and the UN mediator says discussions would continue until Friday. And as ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi stands trial in a Cairo court, gunmen shoot dead a senior Interior Ministry official and a policeman in separate attacks in the latest blow to a military-backed Egyptian government. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.